Welcome back to the channel. Today's story begins with a single act of kindness, one human choosing to save a dying stranger in the woods. But that choice sets off a chain reaction that pulls Earth into a galactic war, awakens ancient powers, and forces two civilizations to face the same question. Should power be used to control or to evolve? Stay with us until the end, because this story isn't just about aliens, technology, or war. It's about the courage to change what the future is allowed to become. This story teaches us that true strength is not domination, but transformation. Again and again, we see that violence, control, and fear only lead to stagnation and collapse. The real danger was never alien fleets or powerful weapons. It was the refusal to evolve beyond old ways of thinking. Through Lyra and Ethan, we learn that evolution begins with empathy. Technology without compassion becomes tyranny. Power without understanding becomes destruction. But when knowledge, emotion, and choice work together, even the most dangerous forces can become tools for healing, rather than weapons of war. At its core, the story reminds us that being human is not about staying the same. It's about having the courage to become better, even when change is frightening. The future is not something we conquer. It is something we choose. Together, her entire world was burning. Her family was dead, and now her last protectors were about to die for her. From the cockpit of a tiny stealth ship, Princess Lyra watched her civilization gut itself, the throne world smothered in a civil war. If you found a dying alien princess in the woods, would you help her? Even if it meant putting a target on your own back? Stick with me to see what happens. Your Highness, we're out of time, Captain Thorne pleaded, his hands flying across the navigation panel. Worry had etched deep lines into the old soldier's face. The rebels just tore through our last line of defense. Lyra could only press her hand to the cold viewport, her skin glowing a soft, sorrowful blue. She was only 23 cycles old, practically a teenager by her people's standards, yet the ashes of an empire were now hers to carry. Her father, the God Emperor, had been poisoned by his own advisors just 3 days ago. Within hours, her brothers had declared war on each other, both hungry for the throne. "But where can we even run, Thorne?" she asked, her voice like a sad melody. "Every system still loyal to my father is on fire." "The Outer Rim," Thorne said without hesitation. "Past the Veil Nebula. We can disappear there until—" The ship rocked with a deafening explosion. Red emergency lights painted the bridge in blood. "It's an ambush!" the pilot yelled. "3 rebel destroyers, closing fast!" And through the viewport, Lyra saw them. They were sleek, predatory ships, sliding out from the shadow of a dead moon. The one in the lead proudly displayed the symbol of a twisted phoenix, the mark of her eldest brother, Zarek. He had found her. "Evasive maneuvers now!" Thorne roared. "All power to the shields!" Their little corvette, built for sneaking, not fighting, twisted desperately to avoid the first wave of plasma fire. But it was no use. The second blast ripped through their shields like they were made of tissue paper. The third took out the engines. "Hull breach in sections 4 through 7, someone screamed over the alarms. "We're losing air!" The ship groaned and shuddered, and Lyra was thrown to the deck amidst a shower of sparks. She looked up and saw Thorne's face, a heartbreaking mix of resolve and regret. "The escape pod," he said, pulling her to her feet. "You have to live, Princess. You're carrying the Codex." The Codex? In the chaos, she'd almost forgotten about the secret neural implant her father had given her. It was a living key, a map to the Arkhan's darkest secret, the Prometheus Arsenal, an entire fleet of ancient weapons powerful enough to scorch the galaxy. "I'm not leaving you," Lyra cried as Thorne practically dragged her to the emergency hatch. "You have to," he insisted, shoving her inside the tiny pod and sealing the door. His fingers danced over the launch controls. "The bloodline has to survive. The secret must be kept safe." "Thorn, please don't do this." "Long live the true queen," he whispered, and slammed the launch button. The pod shot into the void like a rifle slug, leaving her doomed protectors behind. Through the tiny window, Lyra watched the Corvette turn and face 3 destroyers, bravely buying her a few more seconds with their lives. Then the universe warped. The pod's emergency drive kicked in, flinging her across the stars in a wild, blind jump. The AI inside had a single, simple command: find a habitable world, any world, far from the war. When the violent ride finally stopped, Lyra was floating in a completely unknown solar system. A yellow sun, 9 planets. The pod's sensors immediately locked onto the third one from the star, a gorgeous swirl of blue and green, bursting with life. It was primitive, a backwater world by galactic standards, but it was the perfect place to hide. The pod called it Earth. The landing was pure chaos. Her pod blazed through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its heat shield screaming. Lyra held on to the restraints for dear life as gravity clawed at her ship. She saw a flash of an endless green forest rushing up to meet her. The impact was deafening. The world outside became a blur of splintering trees and flying dirt. The pod dug a long, smoking scar through the Oregon wilderness before finally crashing to a halt. Lyra hung unconscious in her seat, her alien blue blood dripping from a cut on her forehead. For hours, maybe even days, she drifted in that broken metal shell. The pod's life support sputtered and died. Her body, built for a different world, began to fail. When she finally managed to slap the emergency release, she stumbled out onto alien ground. Earth's air was like acid in her lungs, thick with gases that were all wrong for her. She crawled away from the wreckage, every inch of her body screaming in protest. A deep gash in her side, one she didn't remember getting, was leaking glowing blood onto the forest floor. "So this is it," she thought. "I die alone on some forgotten planet, with the galaxy's deadliest secret still locked in my head." But she was wrong. Ethan Reeves was having a terrible week. He was 28, a genius in biomedical engineering, and he'd just seen his life's work, a revolutionary nano-healing technology, get tossed in the trash by his company's board. "It's too risky," they'd said, completely ignoring the fact that it could save millions of people. So he did what he always did when the world got too loud. He escaped to his family's old cabin, deep in the Oregon wilderness, to lick his wounds and figure out what to do with his shattered career. He was about a mile into a hike when he spotted the column of smoke. It wasn't campfire smoke. It was thick, black, and smelled of chemicals. Then he saw the path of destruction, a massive gouge cut straight through the dense forest. What on earth? He knew he should have just turned around and called the authorities, but his curiosity got the better of him. He followed the trail of snapped trees and melted earth. The air got hotter and smelled like ozone, and something else he couldn't place, something that made the hair on his arms stand up. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the crater. In the middle of it was something that was definitely not a plane. The ship looked like it was grown, not built, with smooth curves and strange, pulsing lights. And leading away from a gaping hole in its side was a trail of blood, blood that was glowing. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he followed the trail. About 10 yards from the wreck, he found her. For a second, he thought it had to be a movie prop or some kind of crazy prank. The woman lying on the pine needles couldn't possibly be real. Her skin shimmered like a pearl, with faint patterns of light pulsing just beneath the surface. Her hair was the color of moonlight, and it seemed to move on its own. She was wearing what looked like liquid silver molded into a suit. Then he saw the wound in her side, leaking that impossible, glowing blood. She was dying. "Hey," Ethan whispered, dropping to his knees beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes slowly opened. They were the color of violets, with strange horizontal pupils. Not human. She tried to speak, but the sounds were like music, a complex and beautiful language he couldn't understand. I don't know what you're saying, Ethan stammered. But you're hurt. Let me help. She grabbed his wrist, and her touch was like a jolt of static electricity. Her grip was surprisingly strong. She spoke again, this time with more urgency, pointing back at the crashed ship, then up at the sky. He got the message loud and clear. Someone was coming for her, and they weren't friendly. Okay, I get it. We gotta get you out of here. He glanced around. The cabin was a mile away. There was no way he could carry her that far. But he had to try. He slid his arms under her and was shocked at how light she was. The scientist in him made a mental note. Different gravity, different bone structure. But he pushed the thoughts away. All that mattered now was keeping her alive. The trek back was a living nightmare. She kept fading in and out, leaving a faint, glowing trail behind them. Twice, he heard the distant chop of helicopter blades sweeping the forest, and he pushed himself harder, his lungs on fire. His cabin was little more than a shack, but it had a basement that he'd turned into a makeshift lab. Ethan gently laid her on the couch and grabbed his first aid kit, but one look at her wound told him he was in way over his head. Her biology was alien. Her blood wasn't clotting right, her body temperature was plummeting, and he couldn't even identify the different layers of tissue in the gash. "Come on, Ethan, think," he said to himself. "What works on any living thing?" And then it hit him. His nanobots. His failed prototype. It was a crazy, desperate idea. The system was designed for humans, but that was the whole point of it. The microscopic robots were built to be adaptable. They could analyze, learn, and then repair any biological system they were in. At least that was the theory. Ethan sprinted down to his basement lab and came back with a metal case. Inside, nestled in a clear gel, was his life's work. It was a strange-looking device, like a tiny mechanical spider with a fiber-optic needle. Billions of nano-healers were dormant inside it, just waiting for a command. The alien girl's violet eyes opened as he cleaned the injection site near her wound. She was too weak to fight, but she watched his every move. "This is going to help," Ethan said softly, hoping she could understand the kindness in his voice. "It's going to fix you from the inside. I just need to put this." He held up the spider-like injector, and her eyes widened in fear. "Inside you. Into your bloodstream. The healers need to get to the damage directly." As she saw the needle, a flicker of strength returned to her. Her face twisted in alarm, and in a soft, accented voice, she spoke in perfect English. "Wait. You want to put that thing inside of me?" Ethan almost dropped the injector in shock. You can speak English?" "Learning program," she managed to gasp. "Neural link." "Well, that thing is going to save your life," Ethan finished, finding his voice again. "Look, I know it looks terrifying, but you're dying. This is experimental, I know, but it's designed to adapt. Honestly, it might be your only shot. What would you do if you found a dying princess in your backyard? Not just any princess. An alien one with glowing skin, bleeding out next to a crashed spaceship. My choice that night changed everything, so stick around to see how a simple act of kindness could either save the galaxy or get us all vaporized." She was looking from me to the strange medical device in my hand, her bioluminescent skin flickering like a nervous heartbeat. I tried for a reassuring smile. "I'm a medical professional. Well, a biomedical engineer. It's close enough. I designed this gadget to heal injuries just like yours. Okay, not exactly like yours, but the science is solid. Please, let me help you." For a long moment, we were just two strangers from different worlds, connected by nothing but desperation and a sliver of hope. At last, she gave a slow, deliberate nod. "If I die," she rasped, "you must destroy my body completely. They cannot find me." "You're not going to die," I said firmly, positioning the injector against her smooth, almost crystalline arm. "This might feel a little weird," I warned her. I hit the trigger, and the device sent microscopic filaments burrowing into her skin, anchoring itself in place. The alien girl cried out, her back arching as her skin flashed a brilliant, blinding blue. "It's okay. That's just the nanites mapping your system," I said, gently holding her shoulders. Her eyes, so alien, yet so human in their terror and hope, were locked on mine. I needed to distract her. "What's your name?" I asked. "Lyra," she whispered. "Princess Lyra of the Arkan dynasty." "And who are you?" "The man who saves dying aliens in his woods." Ethan Reeves. And, this is my first time, actually." Despite the pain, a small smile touched her lips. "Then we shall learn together," she said. On my tablet, I watched in absolute awe as the nano-healers worked faster than I'd ever dreamed possible. They mapped Lyra's unique physiology, rewrote their own programming on the fly, and immediately started repairs. The gash in her side began to seal, new tissue weaving itself together at an impossible speed. "Incredible," I breathed. "Your natural healing ability is already off the charts. My nanites are just giving it a boost." Lyra's breathing evened out, and the pale, pearly color returned to her face. But something else was happening. The glowing patterns under her skin were shifting, forming strange new circuits around the spot where I'd injected her. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Strange," Lyra admitted, her voice stronger now. "Like countless tiny insects are rebuilding me from the inside out. But it's a good strange." She tried to sit up, and I helped her. Her movements were already less pained, more graceful. "Thank you," she said, her gaze direct. "You took a great risk to help me." I just rubbed the back of my neck. "Yeah, well, I couldn't just leave you to die in my backyard. But I do have to ask, what are you? Where did you come from? And who's hunting you?" Lyra's expression grew dark. "I am the last of my royal bloodline. My family. They tore each other apart for power, and I have something they all want." She touched her temple. "Information. Enough to set galaxies on fire." "That's heavy," was all I could manage. "And they followed you here?" "Not yet. My pod has a scatter field. It makes my trail hard to follow. But they will come. They always come." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "You have to get away from here." "When they find you, they'll have to go through me first," I cut in. Lyra looked genuinely shocked. "You don't understand. My brother commands entire fleets. His soldiers could turn your cities to ash." "Then we'd better make sure they never find you," I said, standing up, my mind racing. "First things first, we need to hide that spaceship. Then we figure out our next move." Lyra pushed herself to her feet, a little unsteady. I quickly caught her arm. "You saved my life," she said softly. "In my culture, that creates a bond. But I cannot ask this of you." "You're not asking," I told her. "I'm volunteering." I grabbed my jacket. "Besides, I've been looking for a chance to test my nano-healers under extreme conditions. I don't think it gets more extreme than this." Lyra just stared at me. "You are a strange human, Ethan Reeves." "You have no idea," I grinned, handing her one of my hoodies. "Come on, princess, let's go hide a spaceship." As we slipped out into the cool night air, neither of us saw the satellite silently shifting its orbit far above, or the encrypted burst of data it shot toward a secret facility deep in the Nevada desert. The game was on. The morning after saving an alien princess should have felt epic. Instead, I woke up to a loud crash from my kitchen, followed by a series of beautifully melodic curses that were impossible to misunderstand. I found Lyra standing in the middle of total carnage. My coffee maker was in pieces, the microwave was sparking with its door hanging off, and my toaster was completely disassembled on the counter. "Your food preparation devices are needlessly complex," she declared, holding up a mangled heating coil. The glowing patterns on her arms were pulsing with what I could only describe as frustration. "On my world, we simply command molecules to rearrange themselves into food." "That's fantastic," I said, carefully unplugging the sparking microwave. "But here on primitive Earth, we try not to blow up the kitchen before we've even had breakfast." Lyra sheepishly set down the coil. "I was attempting to understand your technology. The electromagnetic signatures are fascinating, but so chaotic." "Maybe let's start with something simpler," I suggested, pulling a box of cereal from the cupboard. "Like, maybe something that doesn't beep." She watched, completely fascinated, as I poured milk over the cereal. "You consume the secretions of other mammals?" she asked. "You know, when you say it like that, it sounds pretty gross," I admitted, handing her a spoon. "Want to try?" Lyra sniffed the bowl like it might bite her, then took a tiny spoonful. Her eyes went wide. "It is sweet! And these grain clusters maintain their structural integrity despite being immersed in liquid." I couldn't help but laugh. "It's just Cheerios. Wait until you try pizza." Over the next hour, I gave her a crash course in human breakfast food. Lyra treated every item like a science experiment, analyzing its texture, temperature, and, according to her, its molecular composition. The nanites had clearly done more than just heal her. Her body was adapting to Earth's environment at an incredible rate. "The devices in my bloodstream," she said suddenly, touching the injection site on her arm. "They are still active. I can feel them, learning, changing." Her skin patterns shifted to a deep, thoughtful blue. "My body is different now." I grabbed my tablet to check the nanites status, and what I saw on the screen almost made me drop it. "That's impossible." "What is it?" she asked. "The nanites. They aren't just repairing you anymore. They're upgrading you. Look," I showed her the data. "Your muscle density is increasing. Your neural conductivity is up by 30%. And these things right here, I don't even know what they are." Lyra peered at the screen, understanding the complex data instantly. "Biocrystalline matrices. My people grow them naturally for energy storage and processing, but these are different. A hybrid." She looked down at her hand, flexing her fingers and watching the light dance beneath her skin. "Your technology and my biology, they are merging. I'm becoming something new." The thought was mind-blowing. My nanites were designed to be adaptive, but I never imagined this level of biological integration. "Is it dangerous?" I asked. "Unknown," Lyra replied, her eyes meeting mine. "But I feel stronger, more aware. If I focus, I can sense the electromagnetic fields all around us, even the flow of data through your primitive networks." She tilted her head as if listening to something far away. "Someone is watching us." "What?" "Your communication satellites. One has changed its orbit to keep this location under constant surveillance. The signal it's sending is encrypted with technology far beyond anything on your planet." A cold chill went down my spine. "For how long?" "Since last night. My pod's crash must have triggered it." She stood up, moving with an eerie, fluid grace. "We must move." "To where? If they have satellites on us, where can we go?" Lyra smiled, and I noticed for the first time how her expressions were becoming more and more human. "We hide in plain sight." "You will teach me how to blend in with your people," she said. "I am a quick learner." The next few hours were a crash course in how to be human, and let me tell you, it was hilarious. Clothing was the first hurdle. Lyra's biosuit could mimic textures, but it had a hard time with Earth fashion. We finally settled on a pair of jeans and one of my hoodies, though she complained endlessly about the primitive fastening mechanisms of zippers and buttons. "Your species separates its clothing by gender?" she asked, looking at herself in the mirror. "How inefficient." "Welcome to Earth," I said. "We love putting things in arbitrary categories." Language was much easier for her. Her brain had apparently downloaded basic English during our first meeting, but she struggled with the weird parts. Idioms drove her crazy. "Why would one break a leg for good luck?" she demanded. "Skeletal damage is a serious impairment to mobility." It's just a saying, I explained. And what about this raining cats and dogs? Your planet's precipitation includes common mammals? By lunchtime, she could almost pass for human, as long as you didn't look too closely. She learned to consciously dim her skin's natural glow, though her eyes still had an unnaturally vivid shine. We risked a trip into town for supplies, and I was a nervous wreck the whole time. Relax, Lyra murmured, linking her arm in mine. You are broadcasting anxiety pheromones. I'm what? Your species emits chemical signals when you're stressed. It's very noticeable. She then smiled at an old lady who walked by, who just cooed at what a lovely couple we made. See? They don't suspect a thing. Our first stop was the hardware store. If we were going to hide, I needed gear to mask our electronic signatures. Lyra wandered the aisles like a kid in a candy store, picking up random tools and announcing what they were made of. This wrench contains trace amounts of titanium, she declared loudly. That's great, honey. Please stop doing that, I whispered, tossing a roll of copper mesh into our cart. At the checkout line, the teenage kid behind the counter couldn't stop staring at Lyra. I tensed up, ready to bolt, but then the kid just stammered out, your girlfriend's really pretty, mister. Lyra, without missing a beat, gave him a perfect, composed smile and said, Thank you. And his genetic makeup is surprisingly compatible, the alien said. Before she could say more, Ethan rushed her back outside. Once they were inside his cabin, they got to work, cobbling together a simple electromagnetic shield. Lyra's knowledge of physics was light years ahead of anything on Earth, but she was a genius at adapting to the materials they had. Your people have potential, she remarked, her voice a series of soft chimes. The way you solder these connections is incredibly precise. You're only held back by your resources, not your minds. Thanks, I guess, Ethan replied, tweaking a frequency modulator. So what's your world like? The glowing patterns on Lyra's skin seemed to grow dim. Arkan was beautiful once. We had crystal cities that would sing with the solar winds, and forests of glowing trees that were all connected, sharing a single mind. We had finally found the perfect balance between our technology and nature. What went wrong? Ethan asked. Power, she said, the word dripping with bitterness. It's the one thing that always seems to spoil everything. She put down the soldering iron. My father managed to unite the 12 systems. He did it with diplomacy, by making sure everyone prospered together, but then resources started running low. The old grudges came back, and the powerful families wanted to conquer new worlds. My father said no, so they murdered him. Her voice was filled with an ocean of sadness. They used a poison, a slow-acting toxin that attacked his mind, making him doubt what was real. Near the end, he didn't trust anyone, not even me. The Codex he put inside my mind was the last clear thing he ever did. Keep this away from your brothers, he told me. Let the old weapons stay buried. Ethan gently placed a hand on her shoulder. I'm so sorry. I wasn't expecting you to care, she said, looking at him with genuine surprise. On my world, forming emotional bonds with people you're not related to is frowned upon. They call it inefficient. Sounds pretty lonely, Ethan said. I never thought it was. Not until now. She went back to her work, but the colors on her skin had shifted to warmer, softer tones. Tell me about your family. Ethan's hands froze for a second. Not much to say, really. My parents died in a car crash when I was 15. I don't have any brothers or sisters. I pretty much grew up in science labs and libraries. So you know what it feels like to lose someone, she said quietly. Yeah. A small, sad smile touched his lips. Maybe that's why I couldn't just leave you out there in the woods. I know exactly how it feels to be all alone. They worked in a comfortable quiet after that, until the shield was finally finished. The moment Ethan switched it on, Lyra cried out and doubled over in pain. What is it? What's wrong? The healers, she gasped. They're being aggressive. They're changing things too fast. Bright pulses of light flared across her skin. "It hurts so much." Ethan immediately grabbed his tablet and pulled up the diagnostic screen he'd made. The nano-healers were running wild, completely rewriting huge chunks of her genetic code. "This can't be happening," he muttered. "They're supposed to have strict safety limits." "Your tech just met alien biology," Lyra shot back through clenched teeth. "Your limits don't mean a thing anymore." He helped her over to the couch, his mind racing. The healers were completely out of his control now. They had evolved right past their original programming. All he could do was watch and pray they knew when to stop. "Just talk to me," he said, trying to keep her focused. "What are you feeling?" "Everything," she whispered, her eyes wide. "I can feel every electromagnetic wave for miles. Every living thing's energy field. Your heartbeat, it sounds like a drum." She squeezed his hand tightly. "Is this what your people call fear?" "Yeah, that's pretty much it. But you're going to be okay, I promise." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because I'm a brilliant engineer," he said with a weak grin. "And you're apparently tougher than you look." He squeezed her hand back. "Besides, somebody has to stick around to stop you from taking it apart my toaster with your mind." To his surprise, she laughed. A sound like tiny crystal bells. "Your sense of humor is completely illogical, but it's helping." The transformation went on for hours. Lyra's entire body was rebuilding itself from the inside out, a process guided by some alien instinct mixed with his own human tech. Her skin grew new layers that could actually shift from visible to invisible. Her brain power expanded beyond anything he could measure. But the craziest part was when she started interacting with his computer without even touching it. "I can see your internet," she said in awe, her eyes unfocused. "It's like billions of voices all chattering in ones and zeros. So much information, so much noise." "Yeah, maybe don't look too closely," Ethan warned. "The internet can be a pretty weird place." By the time night fell, the changes finally stopped. Lyra got to her feet, looking at her new body with a mix of scientific curiosity and total amazement. "I'm not fully Arcan anymore," she stated calmly. "But I'm not human either. Does that bother you?" he asked gently. She thought about it for a moment. "On Arcan, genetic purity means everything. What I've become, they would see it as a monstrosity." Her glowing patterns shifted into a design he was starting to recognize as pure determination. "But I feel more like myself than I ever have before. I'm not bound by their rules anymore." "Speaking of being bound," Ethan said, his eyes glued to his security cameras, "I think we've got company." 3 black SUVs were driving up the forest road toward them. They weren't using headlights, but Lyra could see them perfectly in the infrared spectrum. "Government agents," she said instantly. "Their trucks give off a unique electromagnetic signature, military-grade shielding." "How did they find us?" Ethan asked, panicked. "The shield works, but we turned it on too late." She moved with inhuman speed, grabbing their essential gear. "They must have been tracking my pod's energy signature since before we even got back here." "So what's the plan?" "You stay here. This is my fight." "Like hell it is," Ethan shot back, grabbing his own go-bag. "We are way past that conversation, Princess. You saved my life by letting me help you save yours. I think that's a rule or something." "Your reasoning is flawed, but sweet," she said, a small smile gracing her lips. Then her face grew serious. "If we run, they'll hunt you for the rest of your life." "Looks like they're already doing that," he said. He pulled out a strange device he'd been tinkering with. "Besides, I've got a few surprises of my own." The truck screeched to a halt about 50 yards from the cabin. At least a dozen agents in full tactical gear swarmed out, moving with terrifying efficiency. "Those aren't standard-issue rifles," Ethan noted. "Energy weapons," Lyra confirmed. Your government has been a lot busier than you think. That's comforting. Ethan held up his device, which was a makeshift electromagnetic pulse generator he'd built using leftover parts from Lyra's escape pod. This should knock out their electronics for maybe 5 minutes. After that, we wing it. A voice boomed through a loudspeaker. Occupants of the cabin, this is the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. We know you are harboring a non-terrestrial being. Come out with your hands up for your own safety. The Department of what now? Ethan whispered. Your government's worst-kept secret, Lyra explained. They've known about visitors like me for decades. Exit the building now, or we will be forced to use. Ethan slammed the button on his EMP. A brilliant flash of blue light lit up the night. The SUVs died, the agents' weapons sparked and went dead, and their night vision goggles fizzled out. Go, go, go! Ethan yelled. They bolted out the back door and disappeared into the dense forest. Behind them, they could hear the agents shouting in confusion, but they knew these guys were pros. They wouldn't be down for long. Lyra took the lead, her new eyes turning the pitch-black woods into broad daylight. She weaved through the trees like a ghost, pulling Ethan along with her. Her strength was incredible. Whenever he stumbled, she'd just lift him right over fallen logs and rocks. Where are we even going? He panted. Just away, she replied. Once we're clear, we can figure out our next move. She suddenly stopped, tilting her head. More trucks coming from the east, and I hear choppers from the south. They're not after me. They're after what I'm carrying. She tapped her temple. The locations of weapons powerful enough to shift the balance of power across the galaxy. Your government would let millions die to get their hands on it. They came to a deep ravine, at least 30 feet across and 50 feet down. Ethan skidded to a halt at the edge. We're cornered. No, Lyra said simply. We adapt. She wrapped her arms around him. Trust me. What are you? Before he could finish, she jumped. For a terrifying second, they were flying. Ethan could feel the impossible power in her transformed body. He could almost see the calculations flashing through her mind as she perfectly judged their path. They landed on the other side as softly as a cat, with Lyra absorbing all of the impact. How? He breathed, completely stunned. Your nano-healers are very efficient, she said, setting him down. But we can't just keep running. They'll keep coming, and eventually, innocent people will get caught in the middle. So what do we do? Just then, a new sound filled the forest. A strange, harmonic humming that made Ethan's teeth hurt. High above the trees, another ship shimmered into view. But this one made Lyra freeze in terror. No, she whispered. They found me. The ship looked like a twisted, weaponized version of her own pod. It landed in a nearby clearing with a predator's grace. A ramp lowered, and 3 figures walked out. They were Arkan, but where Lyra was all light and grace, these 3 were made of shadows and sharp angles. Their leader took off his helmet, revealing a face that had Lyra's features but none of her warmth. Sister, he said, in perfect accented English. You have led us on quite a chase. Zarek, Lyra said, stepping in front of Ethan to shield him. Leave this planet. There's nothing for you here. Oh, but there is, Zarek sneered, his solid black eyes flicking to Ethan. It has you, and you have our father's final gift. Is this the primitive creature that's been helping you? How, cute. He saved my life. Then he has my thanks, Zarek said coldly. I'll be sure to make his death a quick one, right after you transfer the codex. I'd rather die, she spat. That can certainly be arranged. But first, he gave a sharp nod to his soldiers. Take them. Everything happened in a blur. The Arkan soldiers moved faster than any human could track, but Lyra met them head-on. Her new, hybrid body made her just as fast, just as strong. The quiet forest erupted into a battlefield. Trees splintered, the ground shook, and glowing alien blood splattered across the leaves. Ethan scrambled for cover, feeling completely useless but refusing to run. He still had parts from Lyra's pod in his bag. With his hands shaking, he started putting something together, not even sure what it was, just working on pure instinct and half-remembered theories. Lyra was a magnificent fighter, but it was 3 against 1, and the odds were not in her favor. Zarek just stood back and watched with a cold, bored expression as his soldiers began to wear her down. "You were always too sentimental, sister. Too much like him." "And you were always a monster," she snarled, ducking under a strike that would have taken off a normal person's head. "I'm not a monster. I'm a realist. The galaxy belongs to those strong enough to take it, and Father's weapons will guarantee our rule for centuries." A blindingly bright light suddenly cut him off. Ethan was standing there, holding the bizarre device he'd just built, a crude energy weapon powered by alien tech he barely understood. "Hey, Prince Charming!" he yelled, his voice shaking but determined. "Let her go!" Zarek actually laughed. "The little primitive has courage, but that toy of yours can't possibly—" Ethan fired. The energy blast wasn't elegant, just a raw, brutal punch of light. It slammed into Prince Zarek, throwing him against the hull of his own ship with a sickening crunch. Cracks spiderwebbed across his advanced armor, and the same glowing green blood that leaked from Lyra now seeped from his wounds. "Impossible," Zarek choked out. "Score 1 for Earth, you alien jerks," Ethan quipped, but the makeshift weapon in his hands was already dying, spitting sparks and threatening to melt. Seizing the moment, Lyra broke free from her captors, taking down one soldier with a move that seemed to laugh at the laws of physics, while the other scrambled back to the ship, dragging the dazed prince with him. "This isn't over," Zarek snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "The entire fleet is coming. We will burn your world to ash." Lyra's voice was eerily calm. "And you'll destroy the Codex along with it. My father was smarter than you think. The data is woven into my very mind. Kill me, and it's gone forever." Rage twisted Zarek's face, but he knew she was telling the truth. "Then we'll take you apart, molecule by molecule." The thumping sound of helicopter blades cut him off. The government agents had called in the cavalry. A squadron of Apache gunships rose over the tree line, their weapon systems locking onto the alien craft. "Your primitive friends are complicating things," Zarek admitted, then gestured to his soldier. "We're leaving, for now." He locked eyes with Lyra. "You've chosen your side, sister. When we return, and we will, remember that you brought this destruction upon this innocent little world." He gave a chilling smile. "Enjoy your pets while they last." With that, the alien soldiers retreated into their ship. It rose with a low, harmonic hum, shimmered like a heat haze, and simply vanished into the night sky. Ethan finally collapsed against a tree, his body shaking. The improvised weapon fell from his hands, finally dead. Did we win?" he asked, breathless. "We survived," Lyra corrected, helping him to his feet. "But now 2 different powers know I'm here. The real hunt is just beginning." Spotlights from the helicopters sliced through the forest, pinning them down. In minutes, they'd be surrounded all over again. "I'm sorry," Lyra said, her voice soft. "I've ruined your simple life." Ethan took her hand, a small smile playing on his lips. Simple was getting boring anyway. Partners? She squeezed his hand back, her skin glowing with a warm, determined light. Partners. As the helicopters circled closer, they braced themselves to run again. But something was different now. They weren't just an alien and a human, lost and alone. They were something new, a hybrid, adapted, evolved, together. And their real adventure was only just getting started. The Apache gunships circled like giant metal birds of prey, their searchlights turning the dark forest into a harsh, artificial day. Ethan counted at least 6 of them, with the rumble of ground vehicles closing in from all sides. The Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs wasn't messing around this time. Any ideas? He asked Lyra. She stood perfectly still, her alien senses tracking every single threat. Our options are limited. They learned from our last escape. The patterns on her skin flickered, processing information at an incredible speed. But your military has a blind spot. They depend too much on their technology, and I'm getting very good at talking to machines. She closed her eyes, and her bioluminescent glow pulsed in a strange, hypnotic rhythm. It seems your helicopters are having some navigational trouble. Right on cue, two of the Apaches suddenly banked hard, their pilots wrestling with controls that were no longer listening. The other choppers pulled back, confused and cautious. "That's our opening," Lyra said. "Run!" They dove deeper into the woods, leaving the chaos behind them. But Ethan knew they couldn't just keep running. They needed a real plan, maybe even some friends. Anything besides just reacting from one crisis to the next. "There," Lyra pointed toward a narrow service road. "A vehicle is coming. It's civilian." An old beat-up pickup truck rattled into view, and Ethan didn't hesitate to step into the road, waving his arms like a madman. The truck screeched to a halt, and a weathered-looking man in his 60s leaned out the driver's side window. "What in the hell are you two kids doing out here? Looks like the army is playing war games." "Please, sir," Ethan said, trying to sound calm. "We just need a ride to the highway." The man's eyes narrowed, taking in their torn clothes and exhausted faces, then hearing the distant chop of the helicopters. "You in some kind of trouble?" "You could say that." "The good kind or the bad kind?" Ethan chanced a small grin. "Depends on how you feel about government overreach." The old man's face broke into a wide smile. "Hop in. Name's Murphy. I figured a day like this was coming." They scrambled into the truck bed just as Murphy slammed on the gas. Through the rear window, he yelled, "Where to?" "Portland!" Ethan shouted back. "We need to get lost in a crowd." "Portland it is, though you might want to figure out your story first. You're kind of glowing, miss." Lyra looked down. The stress had made her hands emit a soft light. She focused, and the glow slowly faded. "Thank you for the information." Murphy just laughed. "You're one of them, aren't you? An alien. Always figured they'd show up sooner or later. Are you the peaceful kind?" "More peaceful than the ones chasing us," Lyra replied quietly. "Good enough for me." The ride to Portland took 3 long hours. Murphy was a genius, navigating a network of back roads he seemed to know like the back of his hand, completely avoiding the military checkpoints. As the sun began to rise, he dropped them at a truck stop on the edge of the city. "Whatever you're running from," he said, pressing a wad of cash into Ethan's hand, "give 'em hell. This world could use a good shake-up." As Murphy's truck disappeared down the road, Ethan turned to Lyra. "Okay. We need new IDs, a place to hide, and resources. I know a guy who can help. But he's not exactly what you'd call legal, or entirely sane." Lyra tilted her head. "Perfect. I am finding that your species' criminals are often far more trustworthy than your authorities." They took a bus into Portland's gritty industrial district, following an address that led them to a warehouse that said Higgs Electronic Recycling. Ethan knocked on the steel door in a specific rhythm. After a long moment, a series of heavy locks clicked open. The door creaked open to reveal a skinny man with wild hair and glowing cybernetic implants around his temples. His jaw dropped when he saw Lyra. "Ethan, you cold, crazy son of a gun! You actually brought an alien to my front door." "Hello, Marcus," Ethan said with a tired sigh. "We need your help." Marcus quickly pulled them inside, leading them past literal mountains of old electronics into a hidden workshop that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Every wall was covered in screens, all flashing with data streams, satellite feeds, and what looked like stolen government intel. "The feds are losing their minds," Marcus said, his fingers flying across 3 keyboards at once. "The chatter is off the charts. First contact, escaped specimens. The whole 9 yards. My designation is Lyra, she said, her eyes scanning his setup with obvious approval. Your integration of obsolete and advanced technology is ingenious. Hey, I like her, Marcus grinned. So spill it. What's the story? They told him everything. The crash, the government agents, Zarek's threat. Marcus listened intently, all while his hands never stopped moving, hacking into databases and creating fake identities for them with a speed that was dizzying. The Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs, he muttered. I've been tracking those spooks for years. They just hit the jackpot. Validation for decades of secret budgets. He glanced at Lyra. You really got the codes to planet-killing weapons in that head of yours? Information that leads to them, she corrected gently, and I would rather die than see it used. Fair enough, but they don't know that. Marcus pulled up a satellite image. Your brother's ship pinged our deep space grid 3 times in the last hour. He's not gone, Lyra whispered. He's just hiding, probably waiting for backup. Then we have to move fast, Ethan said. Can you get us out of the city? Even better, I can make you ghosts. Marcus held up 2 small, sleek devices, neural scramblers, based on some tech I borrowed from our DEA pals. It messes with facial recognition, scrambles any biometric scans. Lyra took one, examining it closely. Quantum field manipulation. It's crude, but it should be effective. Crude? Marcus looked personally offended. That's bleeding-edge Earth tech, lady. I meant no offense, she said quickly. For a species that has only just achieved a digital consciousness, it's truly remarkable. As they were getting their new identities sorted, Lyra suddenly went rigid. Something's wrong. The nano-healers in my system. They're reacting to something. Ethan pulled out the tablet he used to monitor them. The nanites were active, but they weren't healing anything. They were on the defensive. There's another signal, Lyra whispered, her hand going to her temple. It's trying to get into my mind, into the codex. Your brother? No. This is different. Less sophisticated, more forceful. Her eyes widened in horror. It's your government. They're trying to hack my brain. Instantly, Marcus's screens flashed red with alarms. Whoa. There's a massive electromagnetic surge building downtown. Whatever they're doing, they're not being subtle about it. Lyra cried out and doubled over, clutching her head as her skin flared with an uncontrollable strobing light that threw frantic shadows across the workshop. I can't block it completely. The healers, Ethan realized. They're fighting it, but they need a command. He rushed to her side and grabbed her hands. Lyra, look at me. Focus on my voice. You are stronger than their stupid machines. She met his gaze, her violet eyes a swirling storm of pain and fierce resolve. Help me. Acting on pure instinct, Ethan pulled her into an embrace, pressing his forehead against hers. The contact was like a bolt of lightning. He could feel the nanites in her system respond to him, recognizing their original creator. Through that sudden, shocking link, he felt the attack, a brutal, hammering attempt to smash through her mental defenses. Together, he whispered, we adapt. In that instant, their minds connected. Human intuition merged with alien logic. The nanites, guided by this new hybrid consciousness, evolved on the spot, weaving new firewalls out of biological code. The digital assault faltered, hit a wall it couldn't comprehend, and then shattered. Lyra gasped, pulling away from him, her breathing ragged. How did you do that? I don't know, Ethan said, feeling dizzy. His own mind reeling from sensations it was never built for. I could feel your thoughts. I could see what you see. The healers, she said, a look of pure wonder on her face. They've bonded us. Your technology. It created a bridge between our kinds. Hate to break up this beautiful mind meld moment, Marcus cut in, his voice tight with urgency. "But we've got much bigger problems. The DEA just mobilized every agent in the state. They're putting the entire city on lockdown." On his main screen, they watched as convoys of military vehicles poured into Portland. Checkpoints were snapping into place on every major road, while aircraft swarmed the skies. "They're not trying to be sneaky anymore," Ethan observed grimly. Lyra nodded, her expression hardening. "That's because sneaky failed. Now they're going to try force." With a new strength defining her every move, she straightened up. "I can't let my presence bring ruin to this world. I have to turn myself in." "Not a chance," Ethan and Marcus shot back in perfect unison. "You don't get it. When Zarek shows up with his fleet, we have to be sure you're long gone," Marcus insisted, cutting her off. "Good thing I've spent my entire life planning for government craziness. Time to roll out Plan Exodus." He guided them further into the warehouse, revealing a hidden garage. Inside was a beast of a vehicle, somewhere between a motorhome and an armored personnel carrier. "Say hello to Bertha. She's armored, shielded from EMPs, and packed with enough gear to launch a new civilization." "You actually built this thing?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with awe. "A few friends and I who share the same mindset," he said. "There's a whole network of us, ready for the day the folks in charge finally lose their minds." He flipped a set of keys to Ethan. "Think of it as a loaner. Get yourselves to the Cascade Mountains. I'll send you the coordinates for safe houses as you go." "Marcus, we can't accept this." "Yes, you can," he insisted. "Somebody has to keep her away from the government's scalpels. Besides," he added with a wide grin, "how often do I get a shot at helping save the planet from an alien armada?" They packed the essentials in a blur: food, medical supplies, and an arsenal of weapons that Marcus swore they'd be grateful for. Just as they were about to pull out, Lyra hesitated. "This level of generosity, it's strange. On my world, Arkin, this kind of self-sacrifice would be seen as a fatal flaw." "Well, it's a good thing you're on Earth, then," Marcus shot back, "where being human means that sometimes helping a fugitive alien escape in a souped-up RV is what makes life worth living." They roared out of the warehouse just as sirens began to scream across Portland. Bertha's high-tech jamming suite made them a ghost to anything electronic, but eyeball checkpoints were a different story entirely. "We've got a roadblock up ahead," Ethan announced, his knuckles white on the steering wheel as he saw the military barricade. "Any bright ideas?" "Drive straight through it," Lyra said, her voice eerily calm. "Right through the military checkpoint. You have to trust me, and you have to speed up right now." Ethan stomped on the accelerator. As they hurtled toward the barrier, a brilliant light erupted from Lyra, a blinding flash of her bioluminescence. The soldiers threw their hands up, completely disoriented. By the time their sight returned, Bertha had plowed through the flimsy barrier and vanished into the city's maze of streets. "Is that a new trick?" Ethan asked, his heart pounding against his ribs. "The change in me, it's accelerating. I'm discovering abilities I never knew I had, almost by the hour." She stared down at her own hands, a mix of wonder and deep unease in her eyes. "I am becoming something new." They headed east, leaving the chaos of Portland in their rearview mirror. The peaks of the Cascade Mountains loomed ahead, a promise of sanctuary but also of profound isolation. As the miles slipped by, they began to truly talk, not about the chase or the danger, but about their lives, their dreams, and the strange, undeniable pull that was growing between them. "On my world, I was nothing more than property," Lyra confessed softly. "A political chip to be married off to seal some alliance. My entire education was a calculation, learn enough to be impressive, but never enough to be a threat." "But you became a threat anyway," Ethan pointed out. "In secret," she confirmed. "The palace archives contained knowledge from every corner of the galaxy. I'd sneak in during the dead of night and just absorb it all. A sad smile touched her lips. My father was aware, but he never tried to stop me. I think in his own way he was proud. Sounds like he was a complicated man. All leaders are, she replied, torn between the person they want to be and the demands of the power they hold. Her gaze settled on Ethan. You understand that. Your work with the nano-healers. You could have become a billionaire overnight, but you chose to help people. And a whole lot of good that did me, he said bitterly. The board shut down my project, and now I'm on the run. But you also saved me, and in doing so, probably saved trillions more. If Zarek had managed to extract the codex from my DNA, she shuddered at the thought. Those weapons were locked away for a reason. They can rewrite matter on a quantum level. Entire star systems could be simply erased. Night had fallen by the time they found the mountain safe house. It was less of a cabin and more of a fortress, complete with solar panels, satellite arrays, and cleverly hidden defense systems. When they got inside, they discovered enough supplies to last for months and a collection of tech that would have made Marcus green with envy. Your friend certainly knows some interesting people, Lyra remarked. Doomsday preppers with a flair for interior design. Ethan had to agree. He got a fire going in the hearth while she explored the space, amazed by how strangely domestic it all felt. Just 2 days ago, his life had been empty. And now, Ethan. Lyra's voice was soft. She was standing by the window, the glowing patterns on her skin shifting into deeper shades of blue. We should talk about what's been happening. The connection, he said, moving to stand beside her, watching the first stars prick the sky above the dark tree line. The mind touch. It's more than just a touch now, she corrected him. The nano-healers. They've forged a permanent link between us. I can feel you right now, your emotions, your surface thoughts. If I let myself focus. She finally turned to face him. On Arkin, bonds like this are only for life mates. It's considered the most profound form of intimacy that can exist. And you're stuck with it, bonded to a primitive human. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice thick with regret. She raised a finger and gently pressed it to his lips, hushing him. You are not primitive. Different, yes. But your species has a quality that mine has long since forgotten. Emotional honesty. You feel things without first weighing the strategic advantage. You help people without demanding something in return. Some of us do, maybe, he chuckled. You clearly haven't met our politicians. She laughed, a sound like tiny crystal chimes that he was quickly coming to adore. That may be true, but you embody the very best of humanity. You're curious, you're compassionate, and you're just clever enough to try and save an alien's life with a wildly unauthorized medical procedure. Well, when you put it like that, they were standing incredibly close, the firelight making their shadows dance on the walls. Ethan felt the invisible current pulling them together. It wasn't just physical or mental, but something that existed beyond both. Lyra's glowing patterns shifted to warmer colors, reacting to him. This is incredibly dangerous, she whispered. I'm not from your world. My brother wants to execute me. Your government wants to dissect me. Just being near me puts a bullseye on your back. I already have a bullseye on my back, Ethan cut in gently. Might as well enjoy the company. She studied his face, searching for any hint of doubt. You don't even know me. I know what matters, he countered. I know you're brave and brilliant, and you're trying to save 2 entire civilizations from their own worst impulses. I know you take apart toasters when you're nervous. I know you're terrible with Earth slang, but you're picking it up ridiculously fast. He reached out, his touch feather light on her cheek. And I know I haven't felt this alive since the day I met you. Her skin was impossibly soft beneath his fingers, her inner light pulsing in time with her heartbeat. On my world, there is a saying, she murmured. The universe itself conspires to bring together souls that need one another. "It's a smart universe," he whispered back. And then she kissed him. It was like a jolt of lightning, overwhelming, a fusion of something utterly alien and deeply human. Through their connection, he felt a tidal wave of her emotions: wonder, fear, hope, and a profound affection that went beyond words or species. When they finally broke apart, they were both faintly glowing. "Well," Ethan managed to breathe out, "that was unprecedented. The last several thousand years of my people's recorded history," Lyra finished for him. "No Arkan has ever bonded with another species." "See, we're trendsetters already," he grinned, pulling her into a hug. "So what's next?" "The future is a blank page," she said. "The healers are still changing me. Our bond is getting stronger by the minute, and somewhere up in orbit, my brother is plotting my demise while your government is scrambling its forces." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Tomorrow is going to be complicated. Then we'll just have to make the most of tonight." They sat by the fire for hours, trading stories and exploring the depths of their new connection. Lyra shared memories with him through their link. The crystalline cities of Arkan, the taste of fruit that couldn't grow on Earth, the heavy burden of a crown she never asked for. In return, Ethan showed her his own past, the crushing loneliness after his parents died, the pure thrill of a scientific breakthrough, and the exact moment in the lab when he knew he had to save her. "Any regrets?" she asked, as exhaustion finally began to pull them under. "Not one," he answered without hesitation. "Whatever is coming, we're facing it together." As they found a place to rest, neither of them saw the spy satellite shifting its orbit far above, or the encrypted data burst it sent down to a secret facility where grim-faced men and women were already planning their next move. The rules of the game were about to change, but for that one night, in a hidden cabin under a canopy of ancient stars, an alien princess and a human engineer discovered something that was worth fighting for. They had found each other. The real fight would begin at dawn. The coordinates from Marcus led them into the very heart of the Cascade Mountains. After 3 grueling days of dodging government patrols, Ethan and Lyra found themselves descending into what looked like a long-abandoned mine shaft. But that was just a disguise. Unseen scanners had been tracking their every move, and the rusted-out elevator sank with impossible smoothness into a depth that had no right to exist. "This installation was built long before your government officially went to space," Lyra noted, her senses reading the faint electromagnetic traces left in the rock walls. "Someone on your world has been getting ready for visitors like me for a very, very long time." The elevator doors hissed open, unveiling a colossal underground base. Long concrete hallways faded into the darkness, lined with heavy steel doors marked only with serial numbers and biohazard warnings. The dim emergency lights painted everything in a ghastly, hellish red. "Cozy," Ethan muttered. "So Marcus's idea of a safe spot is the set of a horror movie." "This wasn't Marcus's doing," Lyra said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And we are not alone down here." As if her words had called them, figures began to slither out of the deep shadows. They weren't soldiers or government agents. They were, wrong. They were shaped like humans, but twisted, with too many joints or eyes that glowed from impossible places. A few of them crawled along the walls, completely ignoring gravity. Others seemed to flicker in and out of existence. "Failed test subjects," a new voice explained, echoing in the cavernous space. A woman emerged into the red light. She was middle-aged and wore a lab coat that was singed and scarred with what looked like radiation burns. "Welcome to Site 47, or as we used to call it before they cut our funding, Project Prometheus." "Like the arsenal on my world," Lyra breathed, horrified. The woman offered a bleak smile. "Exactly like the arsenal. 40 years ago, we had our first contact. They didn't survive the landing, but their technology did. We spent decades trying to reverse engineer it. These, she gestured to the grotesque figures skittering in the shadows, are the ones who got lucky. The really unlucky ones are locked away in the sublevels. Who in the hell are you? Ethan demanded, instinctively shielding Lyra with his body. Doctor. Sarah Kane. I was the former head of xenobiological research here. Now, I'm just the janitor for humanity's greatest sins. Her eyes, sharp and hungry, fixed on Lyra. You, however, are quite different from our earlier guests. You're much more stable, more advanced. That's because this transformation was my choice, Lyra retorted. Your subjects were forced into it. Forced is such an ugly word. They were volunteers, Dr. Kane corrected. Soldiers who dreamed of becoming superhuman, scientists who were chasing the next stage of evolution. She let out a bitter laugh. We promised them they could become gods. Instead, we delivered them straight to hell. One of the creatures shambled forward. It might have been human once, but now it was just a shifting, agonizing mass of flesh and light. It spoke, not with a voice, but with a series of harmonic tones that were physically painful to hear. Please, help us. Lyra took a step toward it, her own inner light shifting, trying to match the poor creature's unstable energy. I can't fix what's happened to you, she said softly, but I can help with the pain. A gentle light flowed from her hand to the creature. Its tortured writhing eased, its shimmering form calming just a bit. As it backed away, there was a sense of gratitude in its movements. Incredible, Dr. Kane whispered, staring. You can talk to them, control the mutations. Not control, Lyra corrected, turning to the scientist. Understand. So why did Marcus really bring us here? Because it's the one place your government will never think to look, Kane explained. They abandoned Site 47 after the Cascade failure. That's when half our research team merged with the quantum substrate. Officially, this facility doesn't exist. Unofficially, they're terrified of what's inside. She guided them deeper into the facility, past labs that looked like they'd been melted and twisted by a mad artist experimenting with the fabric of reality itself. In one chamber, gravity pulled you toward the walls. In another, time was stuck in a jerky, repeating loop, the same few seconds playing over and over again. We were trying to reverse engineer your technology, Dr. Kane explained. The power to manipulate matter on a quantum level, to treat the laws of physics like they were just suggestions. We got part of the way there, but human minds just weren't built to handle these kinds of forces. But you made it out okay, Ethan pointed out. Barely, she said, and only because I learned to accept my limits. I stopped trying to understand it all and just started taking notes. She pushed open a thick, heavy door. Which brings us to the real reason you're here. The room on the other side was impossible to describe. It felt like it existed in multiple dimensions at once, with walls that folded in on themselves at angles that shouldn't be possible. And right in the middle of it all sat a sphere of what looked like liquid light, constantly shifting between solid, liquid, and gas. A prototype, Dr. Kane said, her voice filled with a mix of pride and fear. We built it based on wreckage we recovered. It was supposed to be a weapon, something to let us reshape reality. Instead, it became something else. Maybe a key, or a door. Lyra stepped closer to the sphere, her new senses tingling as she read its quantum signature. This is connected to the Prometheus arsenal. I can feel it. We thought so, Dr. Kane said, letting her voice trail off. But we could never find the activation codes. The codex, Ethan breathed, the realization hitting him. You need Lyra to turn it on. Need is a strong word, the scientist said, her expression becoming grim. Your brother's ship is broadcasting an ultimatum to every government on Earth. Turn over the princess, or he'll wipe us out. Some countries are actually thinking about it. They wouldn't, Lyra whispered, horrified. Wouldn't they? Dr. Kane shot back. When you're facing total extinction, people get very practical, very fast. She waved a hand at the glowing sphere. This might be our only shot, a way to even the odds. Or it could destroy both our species, Lyra argued. The arsenal was sealed for a reason. Its weapons are too dangerous for anyone. They don't just blow things up. They unravel the very fabric of reality. Then help us figure them out, Dr. Kane pressed. Show us how to use them. Or would you rather we just gift wrap you and send you to your brother? The sphere seemed to pulse in response to Lyra's presence. Through their link, Ethan could feel her struggle, the powerful urge to protect this world clashing with the terrifying knowledge of what these weapons were capable of. Show me your research, Lyra said at last. Every single thing you've learned. A triumphant smile spread across Dr. Kane's face as she led them into a control room that overlooked the sphere. Banks of computers showed decades of data, all the experiments, the failures, and the few, horrifying successes. The biggest problem, Kane began, is consciousness integration. The weapons need a living mind to guide them, the scientist explained. But a normal human consciousness is just too small. We tried using AI, but it didn't have the spark of creativity you need for quantum work. We tried using enhanced humans, but they... She gestured vaguely toward the mutated creatures they'd seen in the halls. They lost themselves in the possibilities, Lyra finished for her. Infinite power requires infinite understanding. Humans just aren't wired for infinity. But you might be, Kane said, her eyes gleaming. Especially now with your hybrid nature. Ethan watched, amazed, as Lyra's fingers flew across the controls, absorbing decades of complex research in mere minutes. He could feel her mind expanding through their bond, processing everything at a speed no human could match. The nanites were still working on her, rewriting her neural pathways to handle each new challenge. This is seductive, she murmured, her eyes wide. The power to reshape the world with just a thought. I see why so many of them went mad. Lyra, Ethan warned gently. Remember what you said. They're too dangerous. I know, she replied, but understanding them might be the only way we survive. She turned to Dr. Kane. Your prototype is flawed. You tried to copy Archon technology without understanding the philosophy that created it. Enlighten me, Kane said, a little defensively. You see reality as something fixed, and technology as a tool to break the rules, Lyra explained. We see reality as a conversation. Consciousness and matter are always in dialogue. Our weapons don't force change, they negotiate it. That sounds like a bunch of poetic nonsense, Dr. Kane scoffed. Does it? Lyra asked, placing her hand on the control interface. The sphere instantly responded, its chaotic pulsing smoothed out, taking on a clear pattern and purpose. Watch. The room didn't just change, it blossomed. The walls turned clear, showing the shimmering quantum foam that lies beneath everything. The flow of energy between atoms became visible, a beautiful, spiraling dance of pure possibility. It's beautiful, Ethan breathed. And incredibly dangerous, Lyra said. She pulled her hand back, and the room snapped back to normal. With the full arsenal, I could rewrite star systems, turn suns into giant flowers, or make planets sing. The temptation to play God, it would be almost impossible to resist. But you do resist it, Dr. Kane noted. Because I've seen what happens when that temptation wins, Lyra said, her aura darkening with the memory. The ancients who built these weapons used them on each other in the end. Entire civilizations were just edited out of history. Their very atoms were erased from the universe's memory. That's why my father hid the codex. He knew it was better to let the weapons sleep than to risk another reality war. A piercing alarm suddenly screamed through the facility, shattering the moment. Dr. Kane rushed to her monitors, her face draining of color. Perimeter breach. We've got multiple contacts, and they're moving fast. On the screens, armored figures were sweeping through the upper levels with terrifying efficiency. They weren't government soldiers. Their movements were too smooth, their weapons too strange. "Corporate strike team!" Dr. Kane hissed. "Someone must have leaked our location." "Or they tracked us here," Ethan said, his voice grim. "How many ways out are there?" "3," the scientist replied, already activating emergency protocols, sealing off entire sections of the facility. "But you can bet they've got them all covered. The specimens might slow them down, but not for long." "The specimens?" Lyra said, a sudden idea flashing in her eyes. "The failed experiments. They're in constant pain, driven crazy by changes they can't handle. But what if I could help stabilize them? Give them a purpose?" "You want to weaponize my failures?" Dr. Kane asked, shocked. "No," Lyra said. "I want to give them a chance to be more than just victims." Lyra stepped up to the facility-wide intercom. "To all of you who can hear my voice," she began, "I am like you. I've been transformed by forces this world doesn't understand. But being transformed doesn't have to be a curse. Let me help you find your balance. Together, we can defend this place." The effect was instantaneous. All through the site, the mutated creatures stopped their aimless, pained wandering. They began to gather, drawn to Lyra's voice and the hope she offered, a promise of relief from their inner chaos. "Ethan, I need you," Lyra said, turning to him. "Our bond. Use it to help me reach all of them." He grabbed her hand, opening his mind completely to their connection. The feeling was like a tidal wave, dozens of broken, screaming minds crying out for help. But together, he and Lyra became an anchor in the storm. The nanites in her body responded, sending out quantum signals that created temporary patches for the creature's unstable forms. One by one, the failed experiments began to find focus. They weren't healed. Their transformations were too severe for that. But they found a purpose, a direction. Hope. "My God," Dr. Kane whispered in awe. "You're creating a hive mind." "A collective," Lyra corrected. "They're still individuals, but they're sharing their strength. It's how my people learned to survive the chaos of our own evolution." The first corporate soldiers burst into the levels where the creatures were waiting. They were well-trained pros with energy rifles and quantum disruptors, but they had no idea how to fight organized enemies who could walk through walls or suddenly make gravity flip sideways. The fight was a bizarre and terrifying spectacle. Reality itself seemed to warp and bend as the creatures used their own unstable natures as weapons. Soldiers would suddenly find themselves aging 10 years in a second inside a time bubble, or they'd fall toward the ceiling as gravity reversed. But the corporate team was good. They adapted fast, using advanced weapons designed to fight exactly these kinds of threats. "They're still pushing through," Dr. Kane reported, her voice tight with stress. "They'll be here in 20 minutes, tops." "The sphere," Lyra said, her mind made up. "If I can activate just a piece of it, create a small, localized reality storm, you could bring the whole mountain down on our heads," Ethan protested. "Or I could save us all," she shot back, already moving toward the chamber. "Trust me." The corporate soldiers smashed through the last barrier to the outer labs. Their leader, his face hidden by a tactical helmet, spoke through a booming amplifier. "Princess Lyra, by order of the Prometheus Consortium, you are to surrender yourself for protective custody. Cooperate, and this facility and everyone in it will be spared." "Prometheus Consortium?" Ethan repeated. "A corporate alliance," Dr. Kane spat. "Vultures. They've been trying to get their hands on alien tech for decades. Looks like they finally grew a spine." Lyra stood before the shimmering sphere, holding both her hands out toward it. "I need more time," she said to Ethan and Kane. "No matter what happens, don't let them get to me." "Lyra, don't do this," Ethan pleaded. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm and certain. "Trust me." He wanted to argue, but he could feel her absolute resolve through their bond. She was so sure her plan would work, right up until the last barrier fell, and the room was flooded with soldiers. They stormed the control center, leveling their weapons on everyone inside. Their commander stepped forward, pulling off his helmet to reveal a face crisscrossed with scars and eyes that glowed with cybernetic light. "Colonel Morrison, Prometheus Consortium Security," he announced. "Princess, you need to step away from that device." Lyra just smiled, feeling her connection to the glowing sphere deepen until reality itself seemed to ripple around her. "I don't think so," she said. "You're putting everyone in this facility at risk. Our scientists can pull the codex out safely." "Without my permission?" Lyra's energy patterns flared. "Without any thought for why it was sealed away in the first place? You don't understand a thing." "I understand profit," he shot back. "And I understand your brother wants to blow this planet to dust. We're offering you a partnership. Even a smart girl like you can see the logic in that." "A smart girl?" Lyra let out a laugh, a sound so strange and musical that it made the reinforced glass in the room begin to crack. "I am the heir to a civilization that is 1,000,000 years old. I have memories of watching stars being born. And you think you can trap me with a corporate contract?" The sphere seemed to respond to her fury, pulsing brighter and faster. The very dimensions of the room started to stretch and warp like taffy. "Get her!" Morrison yelled. The soldiers surged forward, but something stopped them in their tracks. Strange, twisted creatures began pouring from ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels, forming a protective circle around Lyra. And leading them was Ethan, holding a bizarre-looking weapon that Dr. Kane had been working on. "Sorry, Colonel," Ethan said with a shaky grin. "The princess is under new management now." "Yours?" Morrison sneered, looking him up and down. "A failed engineer trying to play hero? Step aside, boy. You're way out of your league." "Maybe," Ethan admitted, "but I'm a quick study." He fired. The weapon didn't shoot a bullet or a laser beam. It fired pure possibility. Morrison's advanced armor flickered, cycling through different states of matter. Solid, then liquid, then gas, then back again in a split second. The room exploded into chaos. Soldiers were suddenly fighting creatures in battles that broke the laws of physics. In a corner, Dr. Kane was frantically trying to stabilize the sphere's wild energy surges, and at the very center of it all, Lyra was communicating with forces older than civilization itself, and through their bond, Ethan could feel her touching something absolutely vast. The codex was coming online. It wasn't fully active, but it was enough for her to glimpse the arsenal's real purpose. It held weapons that could rewrite reality, all tucked away in dimensional storage, just waiting to be used again. "I see it," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The answer. It's not the weapons themselves. It's what they represent. It's the power to choose what reality becomes." The sphere didn't just explode. It blossomed outward, not with destruction, but with transformation. The entire underground facility twisted and reshaped itself according to Lyra's will. Walls became as thin as air. Gravity became a suggestion, not a rule. And for a brief moment, everyone in the room felt their minds expand, touching a cosmic truth before reality snapped back into a new, stable form. When it was over, the facility was still there, but it was better. Technology and biology had merged into something new and beautiful. The twisted creatures were healed, not back into humans, but into stable, graceful hybrid forms. The corporate soldiers just stood there, completely baffled, their high-tech rifles now transformed into harmless sculptures of light. What did you do?" Morrison stammered. "I chose," Lyra said, her voice soft. "That weapon showed me endless possibilities. I just picked the one where we all get to live." The Codex is still with me, she continued, but I learned something vital. The arsenal isn't about weapons, it's about evolution. The ancients who built it weren't just making tools for war, they were building a way to move beyond war completely. She turned to Ethan, the immense strain of it all finally showing on her face. "We have to go," she said. "This was just a tiny sample of the arsenal's true power." "And when your brother finds out what you've discovered," Ethan finished for her, "he'll come with everything he's got." "Then we'd better be ready." Dr. Kane walked over, her usual cynicism replaced by pure wonder. "This facility, the creatures, you healed everything. How?" "By understanding that every transformation is a choice," Lyra explained. "Your experiments failed because you were forcing change without a purpose. But when it's guided, even chaos can become evolution." "Then stay," Kane pleaded. "Help us understand this." "No." Lyra's tone was gentle but firm. "This knowledge is too dangerous for any one group to have. But I'll leave you with this. The transformed ones can teach you, if you're willing to listen. Evolution isn't about becoming more than human," she added. "It's about becoming more humane." As they turned to leave, Morrison made one last, desperate threat. "You can't run forever, Princess. The consortium has eyes everywhere. Your brother has a whole fleet. Sooner or later, you're going to have to pick a side." Lyra took Ethan's hand and smiled. "I already have. I choose the side of life. All of it. Human, Arkan, and whatever comes next." They walked out of Site 47, changed forever. Behind them, the former monsters began to teach the corporate soldiers about the beauty of controlled chaos, while Dr. Kane started writing the first chapter of a new kind of science, one that worked with the impossible instead of trying to conquer it. And deep in the fabric of space-time, the Prometheus arsenal waited, not as a collection of weapons, but as a kin of tools. The real evolution was only just beginning. The sky over Seattle was on fire. Zarek's fleet had arrived. 12 massive warships hung over the world's major cities like swords waiting to drop. His voice boomed across every TV, radio, and phone on the planet. "Surrender my sister within 1 day, or watch your civilization turn to ash." In an old abandoned warehouse down by the docks, Ethan watched the news reports, his stomach twisting into knots. People were panicking in the streets. World leaders were arguing about what to do. A few nations were even talking about launching nukes, completely unaware that Arkan shields could shrug them off like raindrops. "We have to do something," he said, turning to Lyra. She was standing by a grimy window, her inner light dim with sorrow. "What can I do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Give myself up and save billions? Or unleash the arsenal and risk destroying everything?" She touched the cold glass, watching a mother clutch her crying child on the street below. "Every single choice I have leads to darkness." 3 days had passed since they'd escaped Site 47. They'd been constantly on the move, staying one step ahead of government agents and corporate hunters. But now there was nowhere left to run. The entire world was a cage. "There's another way," Ethan insisted. "There has to be. You said the arsenal was about evolution, not war. Maybe we can—" A piercing alarm suddenly shrieked through the warehouse. "Incoming!" A voice crackled over their encrypted radio. "DEA strike force, a full battalion, and something else. I'm seeing energy signatures I don't recognize." "Arkan hunters," Lyra said grimly. "My brother's personal guard. He's working with your government." "Those rats sold us out," Ethan cursed. "Can you really blame them?" Lyra replied, already moving, gathering their few belongings. "When faced with total annihilation, they chose to survive. We need to—" The entire wall of the warehouse blew inward in a shower of brick and dust. Through the smoke, armored figures emerged, human soldiers fighting alongside sleek, deadly Arkan warriors, their weapons humming with power. "Princess Lyra," a cold, familiar voice announced. General Morrison of the DEA stepped through the rubble, an Arkan commander with skin like polished obsidian at his side. "By the joint authority of planet Earth and the Arkan dynasty, you are under arrest." Joint authority? Lyra laughed, but it was a bitter, broken sound. My brother makes friends wherever it's convenient. He'll still burn your world to the ground once he has me. Maybe, Morrison said, raising his rifle. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today, we're just trying to prevent extinction. Ethan moved to stand in front of her, but Lyra gently caught his arm. Through their bond, she sent him a single, clear thought. Trust me. I'll come peacefully, she said out loud. On one condition. Ethan goes free. He's just a refugee who tried to help. Agreed, Morrison said, a little too quickly. Mr. Reeves will be relocated for his own safety. Lies. Ethan felt the deception through their connection. Lyra knew it too. They would never let him go. He knew too much. He'd been changed too much. But she was buying them a few precious seconds. As the soldiers moved in to grab her, Lyra's inner light flared into a brilliant, blinding white. Now, she whispered. The nano-healers inside her body erupted outward, not as a weapon, but as a shimmering cloud of microscopic machines. They weren't attacking. They were transforming. Every piece of technology in the warehouse began to change. Infected by this new, hybrid programming, guns turned into bizarre modern art. The soldiers' armor locked up as its own software rewrote itself. Even the advanced Arkan biosuits sputtered and failed. Run! Lyra yelled, grabbing Ethan's hand. They sprinted through the chaos as soldiers wrestled with gear that had suddenly developed a mind of its own. This nano-plague of creation was spreading, jumping from one device to the next, learning and adapting as it went. What did you do? Ethan gasped as they burst out onto the street. I gave your healers a new job, she explained. They're not just for medicine anymore. They're catalysts for evolution. Every machine they touch will become something totally new. She pulled him into a dark alley as military aircraft screamed overhead. It won't stop them for long, she said, catching her breath, but it might give us the time we need. Time for what? To get to the one place they'll never expect us to go. She looked up, past the rooftops, to the burning sky. My brother's flagship. Ethan just stared at her, his jaw hanging open. You want to get on board an alien warship? I want to end this, she said, her eyes filled with determination. The Codex isn't just a file in my head. It's quantum entangled with the entire arsenal. If I can get close enough to tap into the Archon ship's network directly, I might be able to fully activate it, not as a weapon, but as what it was always meant to be. Which is? He asked. A reset button, she said. For reality itself. They spotted a news van, its driver scrambling out and running from the chaos. Lyra slid into the driver's seat and placed her hands on the dashboard. In seconds, her mind merged with its systems, tapping into GPS satellites to pinpoint Zarek's ship. It was hovering right over Puget Sound, a massive crystalline dagger aimed at the heart of the world. Okay, so how do we get aboard? Ethan asked. Lyra turned to him with a cryptic smile. We don't. So this is it? Lyra's voice was soft, her bioluminescent skin swirling with colors. He now knew meant deep sadness. This is where we say goodbye, Ethan. What happens now? Don't you dare. He grabbed her hand, his grip tight. We're bonded, remember? That means where you go, I go. It's not up for debate. You could die, she whispered. So could you, he shot back. At least together, we double our chances. She studied his face for a long moment, and then a smile, both brilliant and heartbreaking, touched her lips. He was just a stubborn human. She was a hyper-evolved alien. As they drove toward the waterfront, the city behind them was a ghost town, sirens wailing in the distance. Zarek's mothership blotted out the sky, a monstrous shadow crackling with an energy shield that made the air taste like burnt pennies. Smaller ships swarmed around it like angry metal hornets. There, Lyra pointed. A maintenance portal. It'll be shielded, but it won't be their top priority. They won't expect anyone to be crazy enough to try a direct assault, Ethan finished for her. Exactly, she said. They ditched the van at the pier. In a fluid, mesmerizing motion, Lyra let her human disguise melt away, her biosuit flowing into its true form. She became a vision of living armor, a warrior goddess from another world. She offered Ethan her hand. "Hold on tight," she commanded, "and no matter what happens, do not let go." Then she jumped. For the second time in his life, Ethan found himself flying in Lyra's arms, but this wasn't like before. She wasn't just using her enhanced strength. The transformation had unlocked something new, a subtle control over gravity itself. They soared over the dark water as reality seemed to warp and bend around them. Blasts of energy fire erupted from the ship's defenses, but Lyra simply twisted through dimensions, their bodies becoming ghost-like and untouchable for a split second. They slammed into the maintenance portal with a bone-jarring thud. Lyra's hand lit up as she pressed it against the lock, her unique hybrid DNA completely scrambling the Arcan security system. The heavy door hissed open, and they stumbled inside. Alarms immediately started screaming, but Lyra was already on the move, pulling Ethan down corridors that felt more like they were grown than built. The walls themselves seemed to have veins, pulsing with a soft, glowing light. The entire ship was a living creature. "Command deck," she muttered, her eyes scanning the flowing Arcan script on the walls. "This way." Of course, they ran into guards. Archon soldiers decked out in full battle armor. Lyra fought like a force of nature, something Ethan's mind could barely comprehend. Reality itself was her weapon. One soldier suddenly found himself stretched thin, becoming a two-dimensional painting on the wall. Another aged a century in the blink of an eye, his armor clattering to the floor. Empty. The nano-healers hadn't just saved her. They'd turned her into something that defied the laws of both their species. But there were just too many of them. Just as they were about to be completely overwhelmed, something impossible happened. The ship itself started to fight back against its own crew. Doors slammed shut at random, sealing off reinforcements. Gravity flickered, sending soldiers stumbling. The lights strobed in disorienting, seizure-inducing patterns. "The nano-plague," Ethan realized out loud. "It followed us." "Those little healers of yours are very persistent," Lyra agreed, using the sudden chaos to push them forward. "It seems they're teaching the ship a new way to think." They burst onto the command deck and found Zarek waiting for them. The prince stood before a massive view screen showing the cities of Earth, his handsome face twisted into a mask of cold fury. "Sister, I should have known you'd make a scene." He flicked his wrist, and invisible force fields snapped into existence, trapping them. "Did you really believe you could storm my flagship with a single human pet?" "Pet?" Ethan scoffed. "I prefer the term evolutionary partner." Zarek looked him over with utter disgust. "You bonded with it? You polluted our perfect bloodline with its primitive genes." "I enriched it," Lyra shot back. "Humans have a quality we lost long ago, brother. The capacity to change, to grow beyond their programming. That's why the Arsenal listens to me now. I'm not purely Arcan anymore. I'm something more." "You're an abomination," Zarek hissed, summoning a weapon that looked like a blade made of solid darkness. "I'll carve the codex from your brain myself." "You can try," Lyra said, her patterns shifting in a mesmerizing, hypnotic display. "Or you could listen. The Arsenal isn't what we were taught. It's not a collection of weapons. It's potential," she continued. "The ancients didn't build it to wipe out their enemies. They built it to transform civilizations that had hit an evolutionary dead end." "Lies." "It's the truth. I've touched it, Zarek. I've felt its purpose. We've stagnated. For 1,000,000 years we've been stuck in the same cycles of conflict, the same lust for power. The Arsenal is our one chance to become something greater. We are already perfect. We are dying." Lyra's voice resonated with harmonics that made the entire ship vibrate like a tuning fork. "Look at us. fighting over the scraps of our father's dead empire while the rest of the galaxy moves on. Other species evolve while we cling to genetic purity and ancient hatreds. Zarek's dark blade wavered. For just a second, Ethan saw a flicker of doubt in those cold, royal eyes. Then the prince's expression hardened into stone. Even if you're telling the truth, it changes nothing. The fleet expects a victory. The great houses demand blood. He raised his blade. Your death will... The ship itself seemed to scream. Every system, every light, every console suddenly pulsed in perfect harmony, fully infected by the nanoplague's drive to evolve. The massive view screen shattered into a million pieces, showing not Earth, but something else entirely. Countless visions of possible futures, realities where Arkan and human had merged into something new and incredible. What is this? Zarek demanded, stunned. Evolution, Lyra said simply. Your ship is choosing to become more, just like I did, just like we all can if we're brave enough. Through the swirling chaos, other figures began to appear. It was Zarek's bridge crew, but they were different. The nanoplague had reached them too. Their rigid, unchanging Arkan biology was suddenly fluid, bursting with new potential. One officer sprouted wings made of pure, living light. Another's skin turned clear as glass, revealing their thoughts as swirling colors. My prince, his lieutenant gasped, his voice filled with awe. We can feel it. The potential. The arsenal. It isn't a weapon. It's a gift. This is madness! Zarek spun around, his blade searching for a target, but his crew wasn't attacking him. They were transforming, each one finding their own unique path to becoming something new. Join us, brother, Lyra pleaded. Let go of the old hatreds. Become who you were always meant to be. For a single, stretched-out heartbeat, Zarik hesitated. Then a new alarm shrieked through the bridge, not from his ship, but from the planet below. On the view screen, dozens of nuclear missiles were rising from silos all over the world. It was humanity's final, desperate gamble. Fools, Zarek snarled. They're going to destroy their own planet just to spite us. We have to save them, Lyra said, turning to the command console. The arsenal can stop this, but I need your command codes. Together we can create a shield around the entire world. You're asking me to betray everything I stand for. I'm asking you to evolve, she replied, reaching a hand out to him. Please, brother, choose transformation over destruction. Choose life. The missiles climbed higher, tiny points of light against the blackness of space. In seconds, they would reach the fleet. The Arkan ships would easily survive, but the resulting radiation would scorch Earth's atmosphere, killing billions. Ethan watched Zarek, a prince torn between his pride and an impossible new possibility, between ancient tradition and a terrifying transformation. Through his bond with Lyra, he could feel her desperate, shining hope. The humans will destroy themselves, Zarek said finally, his voice flat. Perhaps that is their evolution. No, Ethan said, stepping forward. The force field sparked against his skin, but didn't stop him. The nano-healers had changed him too. He was becoming something that could step through walls. Evolution is choosing to be better than what you were programmed to be. It's a scared kid from Seattle helping an alien princess. It's soldiers becoming healers. It's enemies becoming family. He reached Zarek and placed a hand on the prince's chest plate. Through his touch, the nanoplague flowed, not as an attack, but as an offering. Feel what we feel, Ethan urged, his voice steady. The connection that ties all living things together, the potential waiting inside every single moment. You don't have to be your father's son. You can be your own creation. Zarek shuddered as the nano-healers flooded his system. Cracks appeared on his perfect, statuesque features, and light began to spill out from within. I can see it, he stammered. The arsenal. Father knew. He hid its true purpose, Not from our enemies, but from us. He thought we weren't ready." "But we are now," Lyra said gently. The prince looked at his transformed crew, then at his sister, who was glowing with the power of two species, and finally at the human who had shown him a courage he'd never known. He turned to the console and entered his command codes. "Do it," he whispered. "Save them all." Lyra placed her hands on the ship's core, her consciousness expanding, flowing through the Archon networks until she touched the arsenal itself. Hidden away in the fabric of space-time, the ancient machines awoke. They weren't weapons at all. They were tools for rewriting reality itself. A wave of unimaginable power flowed through her, through the ship, and through the entire Archon fleet. Reality rippled as the arsenal engaged. High above Earth, the nuclear missiles simply froze in mid-flight, their atoms singing a new song. Deadly radiation was rewritten into harmless light. Plutonium atoms bloomed into intricate crystalline flowers that drifted in the silent void. But Lyra didn't stop there. The arsenal's true purpose was finally revealed. Not just to stop destruction, but to spark evolution. Every single living thing on Earth and in the fleet felt a gentle touch on its soul, a whisper of possibility. Some changed on the outside, others on the inside. All were given the choice to become more than they were. Down in Seattle, panicked crowds suddenly felt a profound sense of connection, each person instantly aware of the fear and the hope in everyone around them. Soldiers and protesters lowered their arms and embraced as the artificial lines between them dissolved. Scientists gasped as decades of new understanding flooded their minds in an instant. Aboard the flagship, Zarek's transformation completed. His cold, hard perfection melted away into something warmer and far more complex. The wings of shadow on his back became wings of pure starlight. When he opened his eyes, they held not just intelligence, but true wisdom. "Sister," he said, his voice now carrying beautiful new harmonics. "I understand. The war is over. All wars are over. We have so much work to do." Lyra sagged, utterly exhausted, but Ethan was there to catch her. Their bond had become something deeper during the transformation. They were still two separate beings, but they were also a unified whole, something far greater than the sum of their parts. "You did it," he whispered into her hair. "No," she corrected, smiling. "We did it. All of us. And this is just the beginning." On the view screen, Earth turned below them, but it was a changed world. The cities glowed with a new, clean energy as human technology leaped forward. The sky itself seemed brighter, humming with potential, and across the vastness of the galaxy, other species detected the arsenal's activation and looked toward Earth with a newfound sense of wonder. "The Prometheus arsenal is active," Lyra announced to her brother, to the fleet, and to the world below. "Not as a weapon, but as an invitation. We can choose to stay as we are, separate, afraid, and limited. Or we can choose to evolve together, human and Archon, and become whatever comes next." Imagine being told that to save your world, you had to become something less human. That was the lie being sold across the globe, a poison whispered by a corporation that profited from fear. They were turning people into puppets, and only a renegade engineer and an alien princess stood in their way. Stick with me for a minute to see how they fought an empire not with weapons, but with the truth. It all started when the message went galactic, broadcasting the raw, unfiltered truth of what was happening on Earth to every screen and neural implant in the system. It showed two paths. One was a transformation, a leap in evolution offered by a species called the Archon. The other was a twisted version, a corporate counterfeit that promised order but delivered only control. On the ground, the difference was night and day. In transformed zones, people were healing their own bodies, composing symphonies with their thoughts, and building impossible things. But in the corporate sectors, you saw only mindless drones marching in perfect, soulless sync. For Ethan, the engineer, and Lyra, the princess who brought this change, watching this perversion of her gift was heartbreaking. Meanwhile, deep in a government bunker, President Martinez was trapped in an argument. Her advisors were split. One side screamed about alien contamination and demanded a military strike. The other could only stare in wonder at reports of citizens who could now see through walls or solve quantum physics in their heads. "Madame President!" a voice called out. General Morrison walked in, but he was a different man. The rigid soldier was gone, replaced by someone with a newfound depth in his eyes. He simply said, "You need to see this." He led her to an observation deck overlooking Washington, D.C. The city was blooming. Buildings grew like crystalline trees, and the streets flowed with rivers of pure light. Humans and the alien Archon were working side by side, creating a world that looked like a dream. "Is this an invasion?" the president whispered, her voice filled with awe. "No," Morrison replied softly. "It's an invitation." He flexed his hand, and a soft energy danced between his fingers. "I tried to fight them, to capture the princess. I was afraid of losing what made us human. But then I realized humanity was never in our DNA. It's in our choices." High above them, on a living ship that looked like a cross between a cloud and a crystal, Lyra and Ethan were getting bad news. An alert chimed and their friend Marcus appeared on screen, grinning from his newly upgraded workshop. "Heads up, lovebirds," he said. "We've got corporate problems. The Prometheus Consortium just told the world your transformation is a bioweapon. They're rallying all the scared people to their side." Ethan sighed. "Of course they are. Can't have evolution cutting into your profit margins." "Oh, it gets worse," Marcus added. "They've cooked up their own version of the nanotech. But theirs doesn't give you a choice. It just rewrites you into what they want you to be." Lyra's face hardened. "We have to stop them," Ethan declared. "No," Lyra corrected gently. "We have to show them a better way. Fighting them just proves their point." She turned to an Archon commander. "Brother, I need something from the old arsenal. Not a weapon. A mirror." The commander's eyes widened. "The reality reflection matrix? That's ambitious." "What's that?" Ethan asked. Lyra explained. "It doesn't show you facts. It shows you the truth. The person you are, right next to the person you could become. It's a test to see if you're ready for change." They landed their small ship in New York City, the heart of the consortium's power. Their top enforcer, Colonel Harrison, was waiting with an army. "Princess," he sneered. "Come to spread more of your alien plague?" "I've come to offer truth," she replied calmly. He raised his weapon and fired a beam of energy straight at her, but instead of hurting her, the energy just melted into her. She absorbed it completely. "Your weapon is based on our technology," she noted, "but you only copied the surface. Let me show you its depth." She placed her hand on the floor, and the entire skyscraper suddenly woke up. Every wire, every circuit, every computer began to think for itself. Harrison gasped as his high-tech rifle blossomed into a bouquet of fiber-optic flowers. The building's two nanosystems, the one of control and the one of choice, began to talk to each other, and the one offering freedom started winning. Drone workers stopped in their tracks, blinking as free will flooded back into their minds. Executives watched in horror as their mandatory cybernetics started offering them suggestions instead of orders. "You're destroying everything," Harrison yelled. "No," Ethan said, stepping forward. "We're revealing everything. Your whole system only worked because people didn't know they were in a cage." They finally reached the top floor, where the CEO, Margaret Sterling, watched her empire crumble from behind reinforced glass. "You've ruined us," she said, her voice like ice. "You've brought chaos." "You see chaos," Lyra replied. "We see people choosing to work together as equals." Lyra placed her hand on the glass, and the reality mirror flowed through it. For a single, stunning moment, Sterling saw herself not as a powerful CEO, but as the scared little girl she once was, a child who believed that controlling everything was the only way to be safe. She saw the powerful, compassionate leader she could have become, if she had only chosen connection over control. In that moment of truth, the will of the consortium shattered. As if on cue, the Arkan fleet appeared in the sky. They hadn't come to fight. They'd seen the truth Lyra had broadcasted and came to join the transformation. Lyra shared the final secret. The ancient race who built the arsenal hadn't died out. They had evolved beyond bodies, becoming one with the universe itself. The arsenal was never a weapon. It was a tool to help others do the same. Its only purpose was to choose love over war. A new era began. Zarik, the former conqueror, addressed the blended fleet. "I came here to conquer," he announced. "But I leave as a catalyst. Those who wish to remain unchanged can go. But those ready for transformation, stay, learn, and grow with us." Almost everyone stayed. Humans and Arkan began building a future together, a bridge to the stars. The children born in this new age were different, able to see new colors and think in languages made of math and music. Ethan and Lyra became legends, the engineer and the princess who chose connection over conflict. One night, as they watched a new, shimmering aurora grace Earth sky, Lyra asked him, "Any regrets?" "Only one," Ethan admitted with a smile. "I never got to show you what a proper Earth pizza tastes like." She laughed, a sound of what was now a perfect mix of alien chimes and human warmth. "There's time," she said, taking his hand. "Infinite time. Infinite possibilities." As their combined light painted the deck in colors that didn't have names yet, she whispered, "Together. Always." Behind them, the ships of two worlds danced in the sky, writing the first chapter of a brand new story for the galaxy. A story that taught everyone the most important lesson. True strength isn't about becoming less of who you are, but having the courage to become so much more. Imagine being fired and having your life's work stolen by your boss, only to watch her use it to take over the world. That's exactly what happened to me, Ilara. She took my dream of healing the planet and twisted it into a nightmare. But what she didn't know was that she'd missed one tiny detail. A detail that would change everything. If you want to see how the underdog gets the ultimate revenge, stick around for this story. It was a Tuesday when CEO Sterling presented my project to the world. I sat in my tiny apartment, surrounded by eviction notices, watching the woman who ruined me smile on TV. She called my ecological restoration system the Unity Plague, a tool to bring humanity under her corporate control. I felt so helpless, so small. All my years of research, pouring my heart into every line of code, were gone. I'd designed it to help plants communicate and heal polluted soil. She was using it to control people's minds. That night, I was packing up my life when I found an old data chip my mentor, Dr. Eris, had given me before he passed away. "For a rainy day," he'd said with a wink. This was more like a hurricane. I plugged it in, and a message flickered to life. It wasn't from him, but for him. A complex equation, a star map, and a single word. Arsenal. Suddenly, I had a spark of hope. Aris had been working on something big, something secret, and he must have left me a clue. At the same time, strange things started happening around the city. A traffic cop who'd been notoriously grumpy was suddenly directing cars with the grace of a symphony conductor. A group of kids in the park, who were always fighting, were now working together to build an incredible sculpture out of scrap metal. The Unity Plague wasn't working the way Sterling planned. It wasn't forcing control. It was unlocking potential. I knew I had to get back into that corporate tower. I called the only person I could trust, Ethan, the head of security. He'd always looked out for me, slipping me extra food from the cafeteria when I worked late. "They're turning people into puppets, Ethan," I pleaded. He'd seen the strange, positive side effects too, and agreed to help. He got me inside, and we navigated the building, dodging guards now moving with unsettling, synchronized precision. We finally reached Sterling's office, where she was watching global news feeds with a smug look. But her smile faded as a massive alert flashed on screen. An alien fleet had just appeared in orbit. The old guard of the Arkan Empire, here to conquer. "They're demanding our surrender," Sterling whispered, her voice trembling for the first time. But as the Arkan ships entered our atmosphere, something incredible happened. Their engines sputtered, and their weapon systems went dark. The Unity Plague, my creation, was interacting with the planet's magnetic field, creating a gentle wave of pure understanding. Over their comms, we heard the Arkan High Admiral say, "We came to conquer, but what are we conquering, and why?" The fleet just hung there in the sky, completely paralyzed by a sudden philosophical crisis. Some ships even powered down their weapons entirely. Sterling stared in disbelief. Her weapon had failed. My plague refused to be an instrument of violence. "It protects those who choose to grow," I told her, finally understanding. "It doesn't use force. It makes violence impossible by making you understand the one you're trying to hurt." With the alien threat neutralized by pure empathy, the real transformation began on Earth. Fear vanished, replaced by a boom of creativity. Musicians composed songs using gravity waves. Artists learned to paint with living light. Kids were the first to truly embrace it. A little girl in Mumbai figured out how to talk to plants using chemistry, helping regrow a forest in weeks. A boy in Sao Paulo learned how to phase through solid objects. We weren't being controlled. We were being upgraded. We were evolving. Sterling watched all of this from her tower, completely defeated. The world she wanted to rule was slipping through her fingers, becoming something far too beautiful for her to control. That's when I found it, hidden in her private server, the final file from Eris. It was a recording of him, activated by the global change. "My dear Elara," he said, his voice warm and familiar. "If you're seeing this, you've unlocked the truth. The arsenal was never a weapon. It was a gift for the next generation. For you." He explained that humanity was on the verge of something incredible, and my work was the key. We were meant to become a bridge to something greater than physical existence. His final words were, "Unite the species of the galaxy. It's time to grow." Tears streamed down my face. I finally understood my purpose. I turned to Sterling, who looked small and lost. The board members were in a panic. I walked over to her console and opened a channel to the entire building. "You have a choice," I announced. "You can fight this change, or you can be part of it." I looked directly at Sterling. She saw the new world blooming outside her window, a world she couldn't own. And for the first time, she saw me not as a pawn, but as a person. She reached out and pressed the button to open the doors, surrendering not to me, but to a better future. The transformation was gentle. She didn't lose her intelligence. She gained an ocean of empathy. "My God," she whispered, looking at her hands. "What have I been doing?" "What you thought you had to," I replied softly. "But now, we can do something better." Sterling, with her vast resources, immediately started converting her corporate facilities into centers for discovery and growth. As if on cue, new ships began arriving. Not warships, but explorers and artists from across the galaxy. drawn by the signal of our evolution. The crystalline Centauri came to teach us how to think across millennia. The gaseous nebula-born showed us that consciousness doesn't need a body. Earth became a galactic meeting point for everyone ready to evolve. A few weeks later, Ethan and I were walking through a transformed New York City. Buildings now grew like living coral, and people tended to them by soaking up sunlight. "Look what you started," he said, smiling. "Not started," I corrected him, leaning against his shoulder. "Continued. We're just the next chapter." He laughed. "So the princess and the engineer who evolved the galaxy. What now?" I grinned. "Now, you fulfill your promise to show me what real New York pizza tastes like." We found a little shop where the owner could taste molecular structures, creating flavors that were like symphonies on your tongue. As we ate, I asked him, "No regrets?" He took my hand. "Only one. That we didn't meet sooner." I smiled, feeling the warmth of his hand and the joy of the melted cheese. "Time is just another dimension for us to explore now. Who says we didn't?" I told him about what Aris's message had shown me, that evolution has no final destination. There's always another amazing transformation waiting for us. "Sounds exhausting," he joked. I leaned in close, my heart feeling lighter than it ever had. "Sounds wonderful, especially with you." Our love had been the spark, but the fire was now warming the entire galaxy. Above us, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, pulsing with new life. The story wasn't over. It didn't have an ending, because evolution never stops. It just pauses, takes a breath, and then leaps toward the next impossible, wonderful future. And together, hand in hand, we were ready to leap right along with it.